Hello my friends and welcome back to Chess with Konstantin. Today in the sixth lesson of The Fun of Attack, we are going to be exploring the new concept of mobile center. Now a mobile center is a kind of center where two central pawns of either side have no clear obstacles and are able to make movements forward like so. The mobile center concept is going to be revolving around trying to make breakthroughs with your pawns, and the person without the pawn center is going to be trying to find ways to either block or sabotage those advances, or to organize some kind of counterattack on one of the flanks. Now the game I'm using today to illustrate the concept is a game that was played between two legendary grandmasters of the 1930s, and you will hear those names over and over again if you study the classic games. With the black pieces we have Grandmaster Paul Carey's, very famous grandmaster, and with the black pieces we have probably one of the most, if not the most, amazing, kind of robust endgame experts of all time, arguably even more so than Magnus Carlsen. We have Reuben Fine. And actually Grandmaster Fine wrote a wonderful and very comprehensive guide to the endgame that's quite thick but very, very good if you guys want to check that out. So the game, this is I didn't want to bore you with the opening, so we are starting on move 14. And here it's white to move, Paul Carey's is white, and Paul Carey's plays rook f to e1. A very logical move, supporting the central pawn here. Black responds with rook to c8, attacking white's bishop and putting the rook on an active line. White retreats bishop b3. And now we have a logical move knight to f6 with the double attack on white's central pawn. This is exactly what you're supposed to do if you happen to be in a side that doesn't have the double pawn center. So white here chose, rather than advancing the pawn, as I'm sure many of you would, white chose correctly to delay this advance and played queen to f4, defending this pawn. So now if black tries to capture it, then you can trade the rook and the pawn for two minor pieces, and actually that trade would be to white's advantage. So black plays another logical move, very straightforward, queen to c7, offering the trade of these queens. And if queen takes c7 and rook takes c7, then you have this double attack without the queens on the board, and this will be better for black. However, white doesn't take the bait and plays queen to h4, maintaining this defense, and also looking towards, very importantly, looking towards black h-pawn. So now you could have possible mate threats with knight to g5, followed by e5, chasing the defender away, and then you could have this threat of queen takes h7. So this is all long-term plan. Black plays rook f to d8, another good logical move, putting the rook on an active line and attacking one of white's central pawns. And now white plays move rook to e3 with the idea to double the central rooks. Now before we continue with this game, I want you to go back one move here and just pause the video and see there are at least two moves here that are actually better for white than what Paul Carey's played. So see if you can be better than Grandmaster Paul Carey's, and just take a couple of minutes and see if you can find the ideas behind a couple of other moves besides rook to e3. I'll give you a couple of seconds. And if you like the video so far, please feel free to click that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now let's take a look at what moves are better than rook to e3. So first of all, knight to g5 is clearly better than rook e3. And the idea I already mentioned behind knight to g5 is you're threatening to play pawn to e5, chasing this knight away, and then queen will capture on h7. So for example, black plays rook e8, then e5, knight d5, and here white wins 2 pawns with a very strong attack. But what happens if black plays h6, chasing the knight and defending this check? Well, here white has the knight sacrifice. Knight takes e6, with the idea that it's not really a sacrifice, because if white captures, then as you can see, bishop can capture on e6 with the fork on the king and the rook. And here it will not be a trade of a rook for 1 pawn and for 2 pieces for a rook and a pawn, but it in fact will be a trade of 2 minor pieces in exchange for a rook and 2 pawns. And one of those those pawns will be central pawns. So actually the resulting exchanges will be better for white here, because these 2 pawns supported by rooks and without any kind of pawn blocking or opposition will be extremely strong. So knight to g5 was better. Another move that was better is to play e5 here right away, because after knight d5 then you have knight to g5 again, and after h6 then you now have knight to e4, threatening to come to d6 with the knight, and then play like rook to d3 and, you know, try to put rook on one of these active squares. So then after knight to c3, forking the rook and the knight and forcing a knight trade, instead of taking the knight here, you have the spectacular knight sacrifice, knight to f6 check. And it looks like maybe it's a little bit dubious, but it's not really possible to capture this knight, because if black plays like g to f6, then you have e to f6, and this is a mate threat already. So already white is threatening. For example, if black takes this rook, then it's like mate in 3, just queen to h6, and it's not really possible to stop this. So this is very, very difficult for black to defend, and maybe a computer could defend this with difficulty, but this is actually much, much better for white. And I want you to, in your future games, keep in mind these kinds of sacrifices, that this is not really a sacrifice if it's possible to capture with a pawn, and you have kind of like an active queen, active rooks that can be lifted, and all black's pieces on the other side of the board. This is a positional sacrifice that's really good for the attacking side. But let's go back to the game. In the game, pokerers did not see either e5 right away nor knight g5 and played rook to e3. It's not a bad move. The idea is that you can double these rooks, and also eventually you can have a rook lift over to the king side, a common enough attacking scene. So after rook e3, we have a counterattack on the flank, a textbook pawn counterattack. This is what you're supposed to do when your opponent has a center, but one of the flanks you have an advantage. You're trying to push your advantage on the flank. So we have rook d to e1, doubling these rooks behind the pawn, and a5, again classical move. And after a4 we have b4, creating a permanent weakness, permanent pass pawn on the queen side. So white continued here with pawn to d5, and after capturing, we have not capture back, of course, because that would be bad, very, very bad. Look at this. This would be horrible for white with this active knight. But we have e5 instead. We have both rooks behind the pawn, and because we have the mobile center, we have to try to push our central attack. Then black could have played here knight to e4, but knight to e4 doesn't work. Here is why. So after knight e4 we have right away e6, and after pawn sacrifice, and after f takes e6, then we have rook takes e4, sacrificing the rook for the knight. And after captures, then of course this is a very dangerous fork. But even before taking bishop takes e6 check, we have the knight to g5 move with this attack. And this attack is extremely strong. This will be very, very unpleasant for white to play. For example, if for black to play. So if black plays h6, then you have either knight or bishop capturing on e6, and either one will be extremely, extremely unpleasant for black. So for this reason, knight to e4 was not played here. Instead, black tried a more passive knight to d7. And now white decided it's time to play knight to g5 with this powerful threat. And black lives by the slogan never mate with knight to f8, and plays knight to f8 here. It was possible to play pawn to h6 instead, but after pawn to h6, white plays immediately e6, sacrificing the knight again, and after h takes g5, then first e takes f7 check, checking the king. And after king captures, then you have rook to e7 check. And here white has at least a draw, although it's quite difficult to defend this position. So here actually the best continuations will be like king back, and then after queen takes here, threatening mate, and this is the only move, queen to c3. Then white has simply a perpetual check here. So there is at least a draw here. Just queen h5, and you just repeat the moves here. So this is in the worst case, white just draws. And if black, misses finding, for example, a queen to c3 or moves somewhere in the incorrect square with the king, then it's possible even to have an advantage as white. So for this reason, being afraid of this knight sacrifice, black didn't go for h6, but instead played knight to f8 here, defending the h7 pawn. And of course we have a knight sacrifice anyway. So knight takes h7, knight takes h7, and now our favorite move, rook lift, rook to h3 with the flank, mate threats along the flank. So this is quite dangerous, and there is not really an obvious defense here. And white will at least recapture this piece and have a massive advantage. So black tried a very creative defensive approach. Queen to c1. Now it looks like a queen sacrifice, but of course it's not, because if white captures the queen, then rook takes c1 will be checkmate in two moves. Check, and then bishop blocks, and then it will be mate. So it's not possible to capture the queen, and at the same time black is threatening to mate white in one move. But it's not enough. Unfortunately, white has the initiative, so white plays queen takes h7 with check, and after king to f8, Now we have simply rook h to e3, defending this rook, so now black no longer threatens checkmate. And black plays pawn to d4. Not moving the queen, because it's still impossible to capture the queen for the same reason, except now it will be mate in 3 instead of mate in 2, if you happen to capture this queen. So I will demonstrate this. So queen cannot be captured. So here we have queen to h8 check, and after king e7, white simply captured the pawn on g7 with the idea that actually this will be mate. Queen captures on f7, and after rook moves to f8 defending this, then we have queen to f6 check, and after king e8 pawn to e6, and here black simply resigned the game, and on account of just how crushing white's attack is. So for example, if black just captures the rook with d takes e3, then after e takes f7, computer is giving a mate in 10 moves here. It's not clear, it's not I mean obvious that it's a mate in 10, but you can just see how active white's pieces are. So for example, here we have this pin, and we have a check from the rook. It's not possible to capture this because queen takes, and if king to d7, then we have bishop to e6 check, and it's made in 9 moves from this position. So it's just very devastating, very devastating attack that I want you to go ahead and explore. So at home, take your chessboard, set up this position after queen to f6, and try to find the attacking moves for white and the defensive moves for black. This concludes today's demonstration of the concept of mobile center, and this game really illustrates the importance of being able to push the central pawns. So the key strategy for the attacking side, the side with the center, is to find opportunities to push these pawns and try to destabilize the defense around the opponent's king. Key strategy for the other side is to try to find an attack on the flank, in this case the queen side, and try not to get mated, of course, with the central attacks. And I hope you enjoyed this wonderful example of game between Keres and Rubin Fine. Next time we will continue exploring our theme with the mobile center. Thank you very much. Konstantin out.